Thank you, Alessandro. I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to be in this nice meeting. The topic of my talk is resistance and intolerance to hydroxyurea. I'm going to revise the concept, the frequency, and the clinical meaning of this complication. Okay. I would like to present you this clinical case. It's a 60-year-old man with JAK2 positive PV presenting with pulmonary embolism. The patient was started on oral anticoagulation, phlebotomies, and hydroxyurea. You can see here the dose of a representation of the dose of hydroxyurea. And here, the evolution of the platelet count and the hematocrit during treatment. As can be seen, soon after the beginning of the treatment, the patient experienced a thrombocytopenia requiring the adjustment of the dose. And at the same time, the patient experienced loss of the hematocrit response. With this situation illustrating very well one of the criteria of resistance to hydroxyurea, that is the presence of cytopenia at the lowest dose to achieve the response. During the clinical course of the patient, was characterized by the apparition of thrombocytopenia, and 2 years after diagnosis, the patient evolved to myelofibrosis. As everybody knows, the goal of therapy in PV is avoid thrombosis and bleeding, treating symptoms, and to minimize the risk of acute leukemia, myelodysplastic syndrome, and myelofibrosis. To achieve these goals, the basis of treatment is the reduction of red cell mass with phlebotomies, low-dose aspirin, strict correction of cardiovascular risk factors, and in many times cytoreductive therapy, being the main indications age older than 60 and history of thrombosis. And hydroxyurea is usually the first-line drug of choice. This has been shown yesterday, the response criteria for PV with treatment. There are two definitions, one in 2009 and the other in 2013, but the more widely used is the 2009 criteria, both in clinical trials and in retrospective studies, including the normalization of the blood cell counts with a hematocrit below 45% without phlebotomies, the resolution of splenomegaly, and also the disease-related symptoms. Complete response is the achievement of all criteria, and partial response is usually referred as the achievement of the hematocrit response. The hematocrit response is the main objective in the treatment of the patients, and this is known for many years ago when Pearson, in an observational study, demonstrated a clinical relationship between the hematocrit and the incidence of thrombosis, with patients with hematocrit below 45% having a very low incidence of thrombosis. This objective of therapy was confirmed recently in a randomized clinical trial, the CYTO-PV study. And I think that there is no doubt that the objective of therapy in PV is achieve a hematocrit below 45%. But what about platelet and leukocytes that are included in the definition of response? The leukocytosis at diagnosis has been correlated with inferior survival, and here I'm showing you the results of an international study, including more than 1,000 patients in which leukocyte count at diagnosis was related with inferior survival and also with increased risk of transformation. But what happened when the patient received hydroxyurea? On the right, in the table, you can see the multivariate analysis of 261 patients treated with hydroxyurea. What we could observe is that patients without response on the leukocyte count also have a poor survival or an increased risk of death, whereas leukocyte count at diagnosis lost its prognostic value. However, I think that in the clinical practice, if we cannot, we don't get the response in leukocyte count, we don't move therapy also for these reasons. And regarding the platelet count in the same study that we published about the response and resistance to hydroxyurea, we can see here the incidence of thrombosis and the incidence of major bleeding according to response in the platelet count. This is the gray bar is sustained platelet count response, and this is no response or intermittent response. And we observe that the incidence of thrombosis and major bleeding was higher in those patients without response. And this result was confirmed on multivariate analysis. But as yesterday was mentioned here, the question is if inadequate response is the same that resistance. And the answer is no, and as Dr. Bertorsek said yesterday, one of the reasons is that symptoms are not included in the definition, but the other reason is why this is not the same concept, is the inclusion in the criteria of resistance of the hydroxyurea dose. And here is the definition of the resistance intolerance to hydroxyurea by the ELN in 2009. And as you can see in the three first criteria, is required a dose of 2 grams of hydroxyurea during 3 months to fit with this criteria. This is a unified definition. This means that the patient fits with the definition if one of the 5 criteria are fulfilled. The first one is the need for phlebotomies after 3 months of this dose of hydroxyurea. The second one is uncontrolled myeloproliferation, defined as the presence of leukocytosis and also thrombocytosis despite this dose of hydroxyurea. The third one is progressive or symptomatic splenomegaly despite this hydroxyurea dose. And the fourth is the one that I presented with the clinical case at the beginning, the presence of cytopenia, maybe thrombocytopenia, or maybe anemia or leukocytopenia, neutropenia usually, at the lowest dose of hydroxyurea required to achieve a complete or a partial response. And finally, non-hematological toxicity. In this definition, the toxicity and resistance, or resistance and intolerance, was not divided as two different situations. And here you can see the frequency of this complication in the only series that is published by the moment, with 261 patients. And the first thing that was surprising is that only 1 patient fulfilled the first criteria, the need of phlebotomies despite 2 grams of hydroxyurea. And this is probably due to doctors are reluctant to give these high doses of hydroxyurea to the patients. Similarly, only 2% of patients presented the uncontrolled myeloproliferation, that is persistent leukocytosis and thrombocytosis. No patient presented splenomegaly, but remember that is needed the dose of 2 grams per day. and 9% of the patients presented cytopenias. This resistance was usually a secondary resistance with patients that have responded initially well to the hydroxyurea, in contrast with the clinical case that I presented at the beginning, and time to resistance was 6 years. We pulled together these 4 situations, so cytopenia was included in the definition of resistance, and then toxicity was restricted to extrahematological toxicity that appeared in 13% of the patients after a median of 4 years of treatment. This is a series with a very long follow-up, a median of 7 years, and median duration of hydroxyurea was 4 years. And another important aspect to result is the age of the patients at resistance, 75 years old and 73 with intolerance. This is new data, not published, and comes from the Spanish registry of PV with more than 800 patients treated with hydroxyurea, and we reproduce more or less the same results with 9% of the patients having resistance and 9% of the patients having intolerance to hydroxyurea. In this case, the median follow-up was 4 years, and probably this explains the low frequency of cytopenia, and in this case, 4% of the patients fulfill the first criteria of failing in controlling the hematocrit. This is the very impressive figure of the survival and transformation of patients. It must be mentioned that this is not a Kaplan-Meier curve, it's a graphic representation of the hazard ratio, and the important thing here is the hazard ratio that is shown here. Patients with resistance has a near 6-fold higher risk of death and a near 7-fold higher risk of transformation. But remember that these patients are mainly those with cytopenia and those with persistent leukocytosis and thrombocytosis. So we can conclude that according to this definition and the categorization that we did in this study, resistance to hydroxyurea is a meaningful prognostic factor, whereas intolerance, that in this case is extrahematological toxicity, to hydroxyurea has no prognostic significance. So here is summarized the clinical meaning of resistance and intolerance. Patients with requiring phlebotomies or with persistent thrombocytosis will be at high risk of thrombosis and bleeding, whereas patients with cytopenia, leukocytosis, or splenomegaly have a higher risk of transformation and death. Non-hematological toxicity has no effect on survival. What to do with these patients? I'm going to summarize. There is now a revival of interferon. Interferon may reduce the PV clone, and is a well-known drug that can produce clinical remission after stopping the treatment, and is also a drug that is related with a very low rate of vascular events, and it has been proposed that can change the natural history of the disease due to the appearance of clinical of complete response, molecular response, and histopathological response. So interferon could be theoretically a good option for resistant patients, but the truth is that many of these patients are very old, and probably interferon is not a good option. Nevertheless, there is now an open study, the MPD Research Consortium 111 phase 2 study, that is aiming at evaluate pegylated interferon 2A in patients with resistance and intolerance, according to a strict definition of the European Leukemia Net, both in ET and PV, but no results yet from this study. Histone desacetylase inhibitors have been tested in patients with similar characteristics. Vorinostat was given to 63 patients, 44 of them with PV, as first line or previously treated. This is the dose, and what we can see is that the efficacy was low, with a low rate of response, both complete and partial, and very active in controlling the pruritus, and a high rate of drug discontinuation. Another study with other drug, givinostat plus hydroxyurea, was tested in 44 patients with unresponsive PV to hydroxyurea, 70% of them requiring phlebotomies, and here is the dose. And again, the rate of response was not very high, 4% in complete response rate, and 42% partial response rate. So I think that these drugs probably have no very many chance to be useful in PV. And the most important drug probably is ruxolitinib. This is the design of the response trial. That is important to say that in this case, in the response trial, the criteria for including the patient was a modified LN definition. So, and the 2 grams per day during 3 months dose required in the criteria, in the original criteria, were changed to the maximal tolerated dose to hydroxyurea. And this, for this population of patients, I think is different to the population described in our paper. These patients also require phlebotomies and splenomegaly. Patients were randomized to receive ruxolitinib or best available therapy, and now the results at week 32 were published. The primary composite endpoint, as many of you know, is the combination of hematocrit control and spleen response. These are the characteristics of the patients, as usually occur in clinical trials. The age is younger than the patients that we see in the real practice, but I think that the characteristics of the patients are representative of patients with long disease duration, important proportion of patients with high risk due to previous thrombosis, and the reason why the patients were included was 50% inadequate response and 50% side effects. Standard therapy was 112 patients received standard therapy, mainly hydroxyurea, indicating that the lack of alternatives for these patients. It must be mentioned that busulfan was not allowed in the study. Regarding ruxolitinib, was given to 110 patients with a starting dose of 10 milligrams BID, lower dose than in myelofibrosis, but during the study, patients received a higher dose, a median near 25 milligrams per day. Discontinuation was very high in the standard therapy, whereas only 50% of patients treated with ruxolitinib stopped the treatment, indicated that they benefit from the treatment. And here is the results regarding efficacy. 21% of the patients with ruxolitinib achieve the composite primary endpoint, and remember 38%, that this is one of the questions of the beginning, achieve the spleen response, and 60% of the patients achieve a hematocrit response. That is a partial response according to the definition of the ELN criteria. Complete hematological response was achieved by 24% of the patients, and also there was responses on symptoms in 50% of the patients. Regarding safety, well known. Ruxolitinib is very well tolerated with no important toxicity. Thrombosis, yesterday was also shown here. One event under ruxolitinib and 6 on standard treatment. The only important issue regarding safety is probably the herpes zoster that appeared in 7 patients with 6% of the patients treated with Ruxo. There were also no melanoma skin cancer, but this is a known complication in patients with with PV of long evolution under hydroxyurea, for example. And regarding transformation, I think the numbers are compatible with what we can expect in this cohort of patients. 6 cases of myelofibrosis, 2 acute leukemias, and 2 deaths. And just to summarize my conclusions, resistance or intolerance to hydroxyurea occurs in about 20% of patients with PV. Resistance includes a subgroup of patients with poor prognosis. Intolerance is an indication of therapy change, but lacks any prognostic significance. Intolerance defined as extrahematological toxicity. And ruxolitinib is a new option after failure to hydroxyurea. And thank you for your attention.